Show, and my guest today is going to talk about the importance of water. And I am big about water because there's so many life benefits to it, and a lot of people just don't know about these things. So my guest today is Christy Harowski, and she's going to talk about water today. How are you? And you are the Value of Water campaign director. Christy, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me.
How did you get this job, and kind of tell me a little bit about your background?
Oh, sure. So I came about it by a lingering and twisty and turny path. I started out in law, but then moved into public policy and ended up working at my local water utility in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's how I got into the water sector. And once I was in it, it really became apparent to me how important water is in our everyday lives, to our healthy communities, even to our national economy. And I eventually made my way to being the director of the Value of Water campaign, where I get to spend my time sharing stories with people about how important water really is to our lives.
All right, so let's just jump what does the new data tell us about Americans' views on our water system?
Great question. So the Value of Water campaign does a national bipartisan tracking poll every year so that we can measure voter outlooks on water issues. And what this year's poll told us is that water is a top three voter issue across parties. It truly is a bipartisan issue. 88% of voters said that access to clean and reliable water is a top three voter issue for them, alongside reducing inflation and building a strong economy. And one other thing from the poll that was really impactful is that, again, voters across the nation from both parties, 65% said that they would support more investment in our water systems.
What do you think surprised you most about the polling data?
Yeah, so it did surprise me how bipartisan this issue was. It's very rare to have an 88% issue that's supported, across both parties. But what also surprised me is that although voters are concerned about affordability, they're concerned about prices going up in their lives, they're concerned about high water bills, most voters, a majority of voters, would still be willing to pay an extra $50 a year on their water bill to ensure that their community had access to safe and healthy water, which I think speaks to the real value of water. And it's oftentimes out of sight, out of mind. The pipes that deliver it to your house are underground. But once you stop and think about it for a moment, you really recognize how critical it is to the quality of our life on a daily basis.
I mean, the news articles that come out, between Mississippi area to Michigan, again to Camp Lejeune, where you've had certain water supply issues. It's really that's, I think, what leads the bipartisan issue. Wouldn't you agree that everyone, not just different demographics, have been hurt by poor water, the not proper water systems, right? That have
Yeah,
caused lots of issues.
I think you're spot on. I mean, I think that we like to think of, lack of accessibility to water as an issue that's happening outside of the United States. But our data shows that more than 2 million Americans still do not have access to clean and safe water on a daily basis. And you're right, that's something that touches everybody. And not to make light of it in any way, shape, or form, but something that often hits home with people is, it doesn't matter who you're voting for. We all would like to wake up and take a shower in the morning. We all would like to wake up and have our cup of coffee in the morning. And those are things that just would not happen if we were not investing in water.
There are water wars all over the world, not here yet. And that's a concern because at one point we could run out of water, right? So we have to really be able to protect our water system and have the best safe water for the United States. This is North America, right?
That's absolutely right.
Okay. What are the symptoms of our aging water system? Tell us about that.
Well, there are many, but I think let's start with affordability. So when a water main breaks, when our aging infrastructure has to be replaced or repaired, those costs oftentimes get passed on to ratepayers, and that's you and me. So that results in higher water bills for people across the country. But there also can be a huge impact on businesses when a water main breaks or when there's a disruption, that has negative impact on businesses. And what our new economic study has shown is that if we continue to invest in water over the next couple of decades, we can reduce those business costs by about 46%, which would have a trickle down effect on our economy and ultimately on households.
I mean, that's very, very important. How is current funding for water being spent to address aging systems?
Well, in 2021, Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was a huge influx of $55 billion into our nation's water systems. It sounds like a lot of money, and it was a lot of money. Fantastic first step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's really the funding is slated to last for 5 years. It sunsets in 2026. It's really a drop in the bucket when it comes to how much money we ultimately need to start to fix our nation's water systems. And our recent economic impact report shows that if we do not continue investing in water, that over the course of the next 2 decades, the water investment gap is going to grow to about $2.6 trillion, which is, you know, a sobering number. But if we do continue investing in water, then we can close that gap by $125 billion, which would make a real impact. And here's one piece of data that would show exactly how. That amount of money is enough to replace every lead service line in our entire country 2 times over. And that would result in, some really fantastic health benefits for our communities.
All right. How is so basically the where can like where are we going to go from here? Like that's the biggest thing. The concerns I have is, the how these water systems, if aging water systems, what kind of things happen to our water if they're older? Like explain like lead is one of them, right? And other things that can end up in our water.
That is right. And so a large portion of the funding through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was set aside for the replacement of lead service lines. So some of that money is flowing through states and down to utilities, and they are beginning to replace lead service lines in communities, which is an absolutely critical thing to do. And kudos to the workforce out there that is doing the work to ensure that our communities are safe. But also, a lot of that money was set aside so that we can make upgrades to our drinking water treatment systems, or so that we can replace, some of the water mains in our country are over 100 years old. And that's what that funding is being used for. But at the end of the day, what we need to focus on is understanding the value of water, and as a country, being supportive and advocating for more investment in water so that we can continue making progress. It's really the only viable option. If we don't continue investing in water, that type of progress won't be made, and then we will be in trouble.
So the bipartisan issue that this is, and that both the people, they have to go to their politicians to tell them this is important on both sides going into 2024's election, and this
You
should
know,
be
th-
a conversation. And it's something that if we don't have good drinking water, we're going to have a lot more health issues, a lot more health problems, and a lot of people more cancer, a lot of hospitalizations. We really have to figure out things. And the other thing that talks about water, sometimes our water places where factories are causing a lot of these water issues as well. So we don't just look at the pipes, we look at specifically enough some of the pollution that's out there, right? That's the other thing we have to address.
well, that's true. And there are many industries that we tend to not think about that are huge water users. And sometimes they're located in areas or regions where there's water scarcity issues. But, big shout out to some of the industries out there who are starting to be more sustainable when it comes to water, and who have great plans in place to understand how they use water, and who are proactively supporting the communities where they're located. I have some examples of industries who are doing that. And that's really the direction that we need to move as a country. We have areas where there's water scarcity, and we have areas where there's water abundance. And if we learn to work together so that we can share this most precious resource, I think we'll all be in much better shape.
Where can we go for more information?
Please visit our website. It's thevalueofwater.org, but you can also follow us at The Value of Water on X or LinkedIn.
All right. We appreciate it. Thanks again for stopping by. It was great information. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.